Jeff Ogilvy survives Wingfoot.
Now the moment Aaron Badley has waited for.
Curry Webb is the 5-time Australian Open champion.
Golf at its best by one of the best in golf, Peter Thompson.
Stand in front of a crowd like this today and win the PGA Championship is pretty special.
He's done it at last. Greg Norman.
Matt Jones gets his name on the Stonehaven Cup.
Leishman to 11 under. Now we've got a new leader, kids.
There it is! Adam Scott. A life changer. Coming up next, you have unrestricted access to golf across Australia and the world. Thanks to Golf Australia, we're going inside the ropes.
Hello and welcome to Inside the Ropes. Mark Hayes filling in for Andy Marr on the hot seat over here. More importantly, joined on my right by Mike Clayton, second only to Justin Bieber in terms of social media followers. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Hazy. Nice to be here. Look forward to talking about all the things that are happening in the world of golf.
It's going to be a great day. We've got some great guests lined up. And Martin Blake, probably second to the welcome stranger, the second best thing to come out of the Wimmera and Central Highlands in Victoria.
A piece of gold. Hello, Hazy. How are you?
Very well, mate. And as Clates points to, we've got some really special guests today. Our Road to the Open series continues with Peter Senior, and we take a special look at the Western Australian Open next week. I've got to learn, Clates. I've got to say the sponsor's name when we actually come to that. So that's going to take out about 10 minutes of the podcast, so I apologise.
The West Australian Open sponsor's name?
Yeah.
Who's sponsoring it?
I've got to practice it before I come to it. So
the Andy Williams Isuzu.
I must say you're looking quite comfortable in that seat, Hazy. Is Andrew Marr's contract rock solid?
Well, you know how sometimes there's amazing things that happen, celestially occasionally, Blakey. Like we had the solar eclipse this year earlier across the North American continent, and every 76 years we have Halley's Comet flash by. This week is a week free of Andy Marr on any known electronic medium. Well, it's a very rare occasion.
Where's he gone?
He's been tweeting pictures of himself up in kind of maybe Byron Bay area, would it be?
Yeah, well, it's definitely got a beach aspect to it. I'm not sure after what he's been saying on this podcast that it's not Guantanamo Bay.
He's been sent to Guantanamo Bay. Okay.
Well, I can neither confirm nor deny those rumours, but he has been giving the president a bit of stick. So, you just never know. It might look like Byron Bay, Blakey, but it might have a little hint of Cuba about it, I fear.
Okay.
I'm with him.
It's a big week.
Good on him.
Week in golf.
You're prepared to go down with Andy on the fight against the president?
Yeah. Well, I saw some statistics the other day. It was the disapproval rating of Donald Trump, and Australia was at 70% disapproval rating, which was we were about 10th, I think. What are the other 30% thinking about?
He shot 73 the other day. Trump,
of course
allegedly.
he did. Yeah, of course he did.
Now, the senator, the Republican
Lindsey
senator
Graham,
who went out and played with him at his course in Virginia, would that be right?
Yeah.
He's done another interview today in which he said, he definitely shot 73, or maybe it was 74.
Maybe 74.
2 birdies and no doubles. But, he's certainly playing a bit of golf in between working out whether he wants to push any wrong buttons in the...
Turn North Korea into a car park,
Yeah.
Ironically, with reference to North Korea, that might put him on the same sort of scoring patterns as Kim Jong-il.
Well, what did he shoot? 18, didn't he? Or 19?
I think he had 11 hole-in-ones.
11 holes.
Yeah.
He was a hell of a player.
It was his first ever round. Yeah.
Anyway, we are digressing a little bit. We probably should just straighten this up a little bit. Otherwise, Andy might just burst through the doors and rip me away from the microphone. But... let's talk about one of the big things this week, guys, was the announcement from Golf Australia that the Emirates Australian Open would return to Melbourne in 2020 and 2022, the first time since 2005 that it's been out of New South Wales. I know there's different thoughts on all this, but there is great support between... I wouldn't say support, but there's a good relationship these days between Destination New South Wales and Visit Victoria, which has allowed this to happen, Clates, but it's probably a long time in coming, isn't it?
Well, I liked the Open when I was a kid and it went around the country. I liked the concept of that. I thought that was good, but they were playing for $25,000 at the time, so it was the commercial realities, I guess, of a modern Open is that if the sponsor wants to play in Sydney, the sponsor gets to play in Sydney. And people in Melbourne, I think they've got some God-given right to have the Open, but Sydney made the Open. The Open's been tremendous. We actually did a podcast yesterday with Jeff Ogilvy and Jeff Shackelford. And Jeff made the point. He said, Sydney, the last 4 or 5 Opens in Sydney have been fantastic. So people in Melbourne to think that we've got some right to have the Open because we're Melbourne and we've got Royal Melbourne and Kingston Heath or whatever. But Sydney have done a great job with the Open, I think.
So in a sponsorless world, would you have a rotation of 10 courses, or would you just take it to the most suitable course in a different state each year?
In the ideal world, I would go around the country. I would go to Royal Queensland, go to Lake Karrinyup, go to Royal Adelaide or Kooyonga, go to the best course in Melbourne, the best in Sydney. But given that's not going to happen, I think that the idea of going out 2 years in 8 is a great idea. I think it's great that it comes to Melbourne. The idea would be in the next, if Emirates decide to stay on and Sydney decide they wanted it every 6 in 8 years, then it should go to Brisbane and Perth, I think. Adelaide has the Women's Open, so perhaps you dodge Adelaide in a less than perfect world. But I think that if we can take it around the country, even if it's once every 10 years to go to Perth or Brisbane, that's a good thing. But plus, I think it differentiates the Open. I remember Royal Queensland because Arnold Palmer won there, and Kooyonga because Gary Player won there, and Peter Thompson won there, and 71 at Royal Hobart where Nicholas won. I mean, it's hard to believe that they played an Open at Royal Hobart that Jack Nicklaus played in, but
that's where he said it was.
Gary Player. I watched Gary. My first Open I watched was Gary Player at Kingston Heath in 1970, where Dave Marr played and Bruce Devlin and Ray Floyd, who was the PGA champion, and then 69 was Royal Sydney and 68 was Karrinyup and 67 was Commonwealth. So the Opens differentiate themselves because of where they were. Whereas now they kind of roll into one because they're in, was that the one at the Lakes or was it Royal Sydney or the Australian? So, but I think Golf Australia as a body, the main thing they have is the Open. So take it to the golfers around the country.
It's sort of realistically, it's become a bit of a bidding war between governments, and in particular their tourism sort of offshoots, hasn't it, Hazy? And just to explain, I mean, there's an 8-year contract with New South Wales, and Daniel Andrews, the Premier of Victoria, was very keen to get it, as you very well know, Mike. He's a very keen golfer himself, plays out of Kingston Heath, and I think he wanted, but New South Wales won that bid, but they put in the outs for 2 years, which I think is a really good compromise. And look, we haven't seen an Australian Open in Melbourne in Melbourne itself since 2002, which was the infamous Victoria 3-rounder where the greens were too fast and they couldn't play on the first day. So look, it can only be good. Which courses do you think they'll end up going to?
I was just about to ask you that same question. I'm of the understanding that it will be a Melbourne-based Sandbelt club, and from what I also hear, and there's been absolutely no decision, I can guarantee you that it would be more likely to be one of the 4 main Sandbelt clubs. And I use the inverted commas that Craig, our intrepid producer, is going to put the magical sound effect on later. The 4 main ones, in most people's eyes, probably Clayts, correct me if I'm wrong, but Royal Melbourne, Kingston Heath, Victoria and Metropolitan would probably be in the front of the pack to host it. I wouldn't be surprised if Peninsula Kingswood threw its hat into the ring at some point. I know that you're doing some work down there, and the course is apparently just in magnificent condition. I'm not sure how far away from hosting an Australian Open it is, but there are clubs that probably do have their eyes open. Have you heard anything yourself, Blakey?
No. I mean, all of the above is the answer to probably the question. Yeah. Any of those would be good. I'm not sure. Maybe Peninsula's an interesting suggestion because there's 2 courses there, so they could possibly close off the second course and use that for parking. Would that be?
Yeah, that would be it gets away from the issues of every other course where you've got on-course parking. You can park on the golf course, and I think Peninsula's never had a tournament. I think it would be. I mean, I think it'd be a great place to play the Open. But clearly there are lots of places you can play the Open in Melbourne.
Of course, we're not short of options.
No, we are very lucky on that front. That's for sure. So we had. Matty Jones, the 2015 Emirates Australian Open champion, announced his intention to play this week and come back to the Australian, his home club, where he performed his wondrous feats in 2015.
Well, a pretty wondrous feat to retain his playing card in America. Would he finish 5th or 6th in that when he was done, wasn't he? Really,
he was just about cool.
He came late.
It was kind of you better finish in the top 5 this week to get your card back next year, and he did. So
that's precisely right.
Pretty amazing performance, that really.
So he's a long-time member of the Australian, obviously, isn't he? So the fact that the Australian is hosting the Open this year is obviously going to be a factor in that. Do you remember that putt that he made to win the Open in
that was always
15,
missing, wasn't it?
that was he was virtually, he'd given up on that, I think.
Yeah, that was
absolutely. The head went back, and then there's a famous photo, that Paul Shire, who takes a lot of photos around the golf scene, and a lot of other photographers got of him just arching back because it was never really going in.
As soon as he hit that putt, he thought that was missing left, and I've no idea how that turned in. That was fate for sure. I had a look at a video of that the other day, and it's never in until it makes that noise at the bottom.
Yeah. Anyway, the Open's not far away.
No,
it's really creeping up on us.
It's coming around.
The road to the Open series that we've been doing has been terrific, hasn't it, Clayts? I think Mike was saying off the air before, Golf Australia should get these things. We should be getting these things anyway. I mean, I'm sure that we're stockpiling them away just to keep some of those, the Roger Davis interview and the Bob Shearer, they're absolute gold. And today, obviously, we're going to talk to Peter Senior about 2012.
And a couple of special guests coming up in a few weeks' time. Hopefully we'll get to Bruce Devlin, and we might, hopefully, Clayts crack it to have a chat with Gary Player, the record holder, 7-time winner.
We did, David Graham, and I mean, perhaps it's the geeky golf guy in me, but, I mean, you could talk to David Graham and guys like Bruce Devlin. You could talk to those guys for hours. They're just such interesting, and they played through, for me, the most interesting time in pro golf. I mean, Palmer and Nicklaus and Player, and I suppose perhaps it was when you're a kid, you're always in awe of the players who are the superstars of your era. And I suppose now Tiger's even gone, so the superstars now are they Palmer and Nicklaus and Player? I mean, they're not. I mean, it's Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth. Are they quite? I mean, they're young.
They've got to build their resume.
The thing is, those guys are young, and in 20 years' time, kids will look back at the era of Spieth and Thomas and John Rahm and the guys who are really starting to play some great golf now. Which
is a strange sort of segue for me to get into what I think is a really controversial topic, and I'm sure you'll both have some really strong thoughts on the calendar, the timings, particularly of the Australian Open. And maybe you also have thoughts on the sanctioning partners and who we basically lie in bed with in a sanctioning sense in years to come. We love to have all those guys that you just mentioned, Clayts, come down to play. It comes down to probably a combination of calendar and also appearance money, the dreaded and sort of eternal problem of appearance money. Blakey or Clayts, have either of you got a thought on what the best solution for the Australian Open would be in a date sense? I know that Mark Allen's come out fairly heavily earlier in the week and said the current date is a poison date. He'd like to see it move to February so that we can have a string of events that sort of fit in well with the European Tour.
Well, the date, I guess, it clashes with Hong Kong, so the chance of getting some of the better European players is limited because they're in Hong Kong playing for more money.
About 5-6 million, is it? Yeah,
on a not a horrible golf course, but I mean, the Australian Open's a much better tournament than the Hong Kong Open. If you were serious about playing a really good golf tournament that week, you would play in Australia. But for the same skill and effort, if you make 4 times the amount of money or 3 times the amount of money, where are you going to go? So you're going to play in Hong Kong. So even guys like Marcus Fraser and some of the better Australian players, they'll go and play in Hong Kong because they need to for their European Tour cards, and two, because they're playing for more money.
The wraparound season in America has changed things a bit, Hazy, hasn't it? Because it's a quiet time for the best players on the American tour because a lot of them are having a break right now towards the end of the year, and then they'll start playing again. Maybe in Hawaii in January. But look, it's difficult on every level when the PGA Tour has a 49-week season. There's just not much gap there. So I hear what people say about it going to February. I don't mind the idea, but where it is now is okay. I think the difficulty is like Clayton says, you're going to lose a few players to European Tour. You'll also lose a few of the sort of mid-range Australian players are still trying to get their money up in America in those early parts of the wraparound season.
What do you think? Do you think would have no chance to get the Jason Day, Mark Leishman, Adam Scott types if we had it in February?
Well, it'd be difficult
because they're really lining up for the Players' Championship and then the Masters.
Yeah, but I mean, those guys don't play all those West Coast tournaments. They're always bitching about the bumpy power greens and the short daylight hours and the cold and the weather. And I mean, if you couldn't, ultimately, it depends how much you pay them.
Yeah. I must say, I'd like to see the Australian Open become part of Europe or the European Tour, which is really they call it European Tour, but it's a world tour.
Well, the logical thing is to stack it up against Perth, really. And Fiji's a decent tournament, stuck out in its own. New Zealand Open's a decent tournament, stuck out in its own. The Open and the PGA are together, but there's no longer a Masters, so there's not even 3 weeks in a row here, really. they play the New South Wales Open, which is, 400,000? So it's not a bad tournament. It's decent. But, you've got the Vic Open at the start of the year, which is a great tournament, I think. They've got the Women's Open, which has hurt the date for the Vic Open because they've moved the Vic Open to avoid the clash with the Australian Women's Open in Perth. So that hurts the Vic Open for the women because the women have got to come from the Bahamas they arrive on Wednesday, those who want to play. So there's so many complicated issues with dates. It's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare. And I just think where it is at the moment in November, it just gives you a chance to grab a Jordan Spieth, who's obviously coming again for the third time in 4 years, because he's in a quiet time. So he's able to...
Well, Spieth has been a huge part of
the revival.
For want of a better word, saving the Open.
Yeah.
It's a big deal that, arguably the best player in the world has come back to play every year. And, of course, his problem is he keeps winning, so he kind of has to come back and keep defending. So as long as he keeps winning, that's a good thing.
What do you think about the Women's Open, Clayts, like the timing of that? And I asked that in reference to the New Zealand Open, which was a pretty big success by all reports a couple of weeks ago. As you say, again, another tournament that stuck out on its own. Do we need to get the New Zealand Women's Open and the Australian Women's Open in the one sort of calendar period?
It would make sense to play the Vic Open, the New Zealand Women's Open, the Australian Women's Open, and then they go to Singapore and Thailand. So there's a decent 5-week run for the women who want to play 5 weeks in a row in this part of the world, which makes more sense to me than playing. I mean, a bunch of them don't come to the Australian Open because there's a cut, when they can go to Singapore and Thailand with a limited field no-cut event. But if you can create a great, really good run of good courses, great events, Vic Open, New Zealand, Australia, that makes sense to me.
Okay, so in doing that would create a scheduling problem because we haven't got that many big tournaments in Australia. I mean, legitimately world-class big tournaments. Right now, if we did that in the women's calendar, we'd have a clash with the Perth Super Sixes on the PGA Tour and the European Tour. Do we need to stand up to the LPGA and shove them around a little bit, or do we need to stand up to the European Tour so we don't have the clash?
You move Perth if you can, I think.
To where?
Can they move it after Malaysia? Don't they go to Malaysia after Perth? Can you play?
Yeah, I think they come from Malaysia.
In fact, don't they come Middle East or South Africa?
I think last year they went Malaysia, Perth, South Africa.
Yeah. Surely there's a better way to bump Perth back a couple of weeks.
So you think we could move Perth into early March into the footy season?
Depends what Mr. Pelly wants to do with the schedule in Europe. But
I guess what I'm saying in at least hypothetical terms is, do we have to stand up to one of these big tours and actually throw our weight around? Do we have weight to throw around?
No, we don't have any weight to throw around. We've got to fit in with them. But at least we can put our case and say we've got all these tournaments jammed into this 3-week window in February. Can we move Perth so they play Malaysia first and then play Perth rather than playing Perth then go to Malaysia, which I think is what they do without looking at the schedule.
Do you think we should get Mike Pally on here one day?
Keith Pally?
Sorry, I don't know why I say Mike.
Mike Pelly's the boss of. He's a member at Royal Queensland. He was the boss of Foster's, wasn't he? Mike Pally.
Yeah, you're
one of the worst golf swings you've ever seen. Horrendous. Lovely bloke. Shocking golf swing.
Nice to.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, no, Keith, the Canadian.
Yeah, he would be good to get on. We should get him on. We should get him on.
We might gun for that, Blakey. I might put that on your homework to-do list, if that's all right.
Okay.
I don't know what else you've got on your plate at the moment.
No, not much.
But as we've said before on this podcast, that arguably the best field in terms of the quality of the players is the Women's Australian Open.
There's
no doubt all our Australian tournaments, yeah, absolutely.
And you can get, you pay the number one player in the world a 7-figure number probably or close to it for appearance money. You can get So Young Yu is number one in the world for a whole lot less than that.
Yeah. Jarryd Vegemite in a locker.
Jarryd Vegemite in a locker, probably.
Okay, so we actually have we given up all hope of ever being co-sanctioned on the US tour? Have we just written that off?
Well, you need $10 million, so you need someone to fund that.
Yeah, a lot of people say, why don't you do that? Well, yeah, you've got to have a tournament that's worth $5 million.
And I'm not sure it's impossible. I've spoken to people who think that you could raise that money.
Yeah,
if you had a Euros Tour event, there are people who would put money into it if it was a Euros Tour event, not if it's anything else. But
maybe if you hadn't potted Mike Pally, we could have reached out to him to throw his hand into his wallet.
Yeah. We could have played the promo with. Yeah.
It could happen if the US Tour did what they did in China, which they don't do anymore, which is that they started their own tour there, didn't they?
Well, and they're playing Malaysia.
They came here and it was the US Tour brackets Australia.
And they're playing Malaysia this week. I think there's a new tournament in Korea. I assume the week after.
Yep.
They play in China. So it's a money deal. I mean, if you have the money, you can you can get a US Tour event. I mean, if someone wants to, if Daniel Andrews wants to lob up $10 million prize money for the Melbourne Sandbelt Classic, then I'm sure the US Tour will consider coming here.
But are we talking to? Are we literally talking to governments only, or can we talk to a Woolworths? Can we talk to a?
Well, I don't know. I mean, no government's going to throw in that amount of money to a golf tournament. I don't think. I mean,
they do it with the Grand Prix.
Well, I was going to. It's a cheap shot, but a fair shot. How much does the Grand Prix lose every year?
I think they put in about $50 million, from what I understand.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out one more cheap shot before we move away from this. Last week, I was in clear pain talking about the President's Cup, and this isn't golf. We're talking soccer here, and I apologise. We won't get it down this path too long, but feeling very, very sad for the American soccer team today, having slumped to fifth and missed out on the World Cup. That's the karma bus rolling over supporters 13 or 14,000 times right there.
Did anyone in America notice that they didn't get played?
Oh, no. Well,
is it a big deal?
I don't think they did until they missed out.
The women's team's fantastic,
yeah. I don't think they did until they missed out. Now there's fire and brimstone falling upon them. So maybe we've got some sponsors over there who want to get involved down here.
Do we have any chance to beat Ecuador?
No,
Honduras.
We can beat Honduras.
What are Honduras like? They're no good?
No, they're okay.
Good.
They're better than the United States.
Apparently.
I love saying that. They're better than the United States. That's fantastic. Yeah. Anyway, I've let that go now. It's taken a week for me to say something positive. Staying one more thing in the States, Blakey, before we push on. The wraparound tour started at the Safeway Open in the Napa Valley.
Yeah,
which burnt down the day after the tournament.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. So that whole area has just been torched.
Yeah. Look, that's the wine territory there, isn't it? Around Napa, and a lot of. I was very sad to see all the wine.
Everyone's got their priorities, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. That was just horrifying to me. But the day after the tournament, all those things burnt down. So Brendan Steele won that event. Didn't sort of cross my radar too much, that event.
He's an interesting character, Clayts, because I know that you and I have been discussing off air the chances of who we approach to come and play the Australian Open. And I'm not saying that he's been approached. I'm pretty sure he hasn't. He's moved into the top 50 in the world for the first time. He's improved his world ranking every year bar one since 2007. Like, he's becoming a legitimate player on the USPGA Tour. I know that it's not something that it's dragged a lot of headlines or anything, but it shows you can just quietly pinch away at it and continue to make a good living. I saw a great video the other day with Charles Howell III, and we all know what he's done.
Oh, wow. I mean, how much has he made? What's he won 3 times and won $30-40 million?
Yeah. Brendan Steele's sort of creeping into that category. It's remarkable to improve your world ranking every year.
Yep.
Anyway, we might touch a bit more on the other tours a little later on as well.
Big story out of that was my pet hate. Jeff Shackelford and I are backboarding.
Oh, yes, the leaving of your ball on the green and not marking it.
Tony Finau plugged in the bunker.
Yeah.
And it's been going on all year. It's just, I mean, I won't say it never happened when we played, but it rarely happened, if ever. The habit of guys leaving their ball around the hole so it might help
to
another
assist
player.
The other player.
So who left his ball? I can't remember who it was, but someone who could have easily marked it. It was a foot behind the hole. Tony Finau's plugged in a deep bunker, chops it out. Pretty good shot. It's running 35 feet past the hole. Hits the other ball, tops 2 feet away. He finishes second by a shot, beating Cheston Hadley and Phil Mickelson by a shot. Cost them both $100,000 potentially. Now, Cheston Hadley got his card back through the fall series. But he lost his card last year. So there's a guy whose first priority is to keep his card for the next year. And he's a long way there. He finished third and made $300,000, I think. But that $100,000 potentially to a guy who's coming off that Web.com tour, it's a big check. It's a lot of money.
Hazy, before we get to... I know we're going to talk about Europe and the unravelling of St Andrews' old course, but something more out of America was Tiger Woods just keeps tweeting videos of himself hitting balls. A few weeks ago, he tweeted a video of him chipping, and then the other day he put one up and it had a caption on it, smooth irons, and they're just hitting sort of three-quarter shots. Why? What is he thinking? Why is he doing that? It's kind of this teasing operation that's going on. I'm not sure whether he can ever come back. I've sort of got my doubts, really, but why is he doing that when he sort of professed all his life to not want everyone in his life and not let, he closes you out at press conferences and he won't answer any questions other than what he has to say, and he calls his yacht privacy. and then he goes putting this stuff out there. What is he actually thinking?
I think the words thinking and Tiger Woods haven't been mentioned together in the same sentence for approaching a decade now.
Do you think he owes that to his followers, or is he just doing it to keep his sponsors happy? Because he's still reeling a bit of cash from sponsors, obviously.
I think his income was down to $34 million.
He's had a tough year.
He's had a tough year.
Maybe he could sponsor the Australian Open.
He could sponsor this. Maybe he could come and play in it.
Wow, this is controversial.
But the swing looked great. I mean, it didn't look like...
Yeah.
I mean, who knows what...
It looked half...
Who knows what his club hit with a driver... Can you beat Justin Thomas from 40 yards behind him now? And we assume Tiger's going to be 40 yards behind Justin Thomas. I mean, does he want to come back and be a bit player? Or can he come back and win tournaments again? I mean, you would assume not, but...
I'm looking at that swing and seeing something that's three-quarters. I don't see any power in that, no force.
Yeah, you watch Mickelson, who finished third last week in Napa Valley, and the commentators were saying this guy wants to be playing golf on the tour in his mid-50s, and you can see with that swing, as long and loose as it is, even though he only hit about 10 fairways out of 54 fairways last week, you can still play with that swing. It's still dynamic and it's still fluid.
Long, loose swings. Fred Couples, same thing. Still hits it beautiful.
Tiger looks kind of stiff. And
I got two words: back fusion.
The Golf Australia website is now the place to go to look up your handicap and so much more. Whether you're out and about on your phone or in the office trying to avoid work, just go to golf.org.au and punch your golf link number into the box at the top of the homepage. Who knows, maybe that last round was just good enough to put you in single figures. While you're on the site, check out the daily golf results at your club, view our course index for up-to-date ratings, read the latest golf news from home and abroad, listen to Australian golf podcasts and interviews, and watch video tournament highlights or tips to improve your game. It's everything a golf tragic could want. Visit golf.org.au today, the home of Australian golf.
Hey, I'm Catherine Kirk, and I want to encourage all the young gals and ladies of all ages to get out there for Golf Month, or the month of October, and go have some fun out in the golf course.
Well, welcome back to Inside the Ropes, and we're very thrilled today to, in our Road to the Open segment, to have one of the all-time great Australian golfers join us, a dual winner of the Australian Open Championship and one of the most revered names in golf, Peter Senior. Welcome along, Peter.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
You've done a lot of things in your career, more than anyone could shake a stick at, really, but twice Australian Open champion has to sit pretty proudly among them, I would imagine.
Always, when you win your National Open, it's always a feather in your cap. I think when you come home, especially the Australian Tour, because it was so small, and Mike could know this, that we had to travel if you wanted to be a professional golfer, you had to play on another tour. And it was always good coming home, but the jewel in the crown was either the PGA, the Masters, or the Open, and of course the Open being the pinnacle of our sport.
Helps when you win all three of those on multiple occasions, Pete.
It's been good. I've always played great at home. Struggled a little bit when I was away, but every time I came down to the Melbourne courses, I just played out of my socks. The courses suit my game. You've got to hit it pretty straight, and you've got to putt well, and I've always been a good putter, and I think that's why I won so many tournaments in Melbourne.
So we'll talk to you more about 2012 in a little while, but people generally remember that for being just brutal weather and, you being able to stand tall among the younger guys. But then I want to take people back to the 1989 Australian Open at Kingston Heath, which was your first of your two national titles. A totally different course, obviously, but you've beaten a field there. People talk about the weather and stuff at the lakes, but they don't mention when they refer to your first one. The field that you beat there at Kingston Heath is one of the all-time great fields. Greg Norman, Mark Halkovecchia, Nick Faldo, Gordon Brand, Frank Nobilo, Curtis Strange, the list goes on and on and on. And you have pantsed that field by 7 shots. What's your first memory of that one?
Well, it was pretty much the start. The PGA was before that night. I played really, really well at the PGA. And then going down to Kingston Heath, which is one of my favourite golf courses. The first 2 days I played with Bob Shearer, and I never missed a green the first 2 days. I shot 66 the first 2 days, and, really never missed a shot. The first green I missed was the 16th hole on Saturday.
Wow.
So, and, you know, that's counting a couple of the par fives in two. I only had 2 bogeys. I bogeyed that one and I 3-putted the second hole on the last day. But it was just a tournament where, you know, you don't often have a tournament where you feel that you can't hit a bad shot. And as you said, beating that field by 7 shots, you know, I felt pretty comfortable coming down the last, put it that way.
That might have been your best single tournament ever, Peter.
Probably not the most satisfying, but certainly probably the best from tee to green that I've ever played. That little period there, and then the Johnny Walker the next week, Royal Melbourne, where I won by 6. From tee to green, probably the best I've ever played in a period of 1 month.
Do you remember? I can remember it vividly. What happened on the second hole of the PGA at Riverside Oaks on the first round? Do you remember what happened?
No, I can't remember.
Okay, I was playing the group ahead of you, I think, and you made 7 down the first hole in the first hole of the tournament, and you're in the left-hand bunker and you hold it out of the bunker. I remember thinking, oh, Pete's in trouble this week. 7 at the first, in the bunker at the second, holds it out of the bunker and won that tournament going away as well. So it's funny how, I mean, obviously you were playing well, but it's funny how just a little thing like that can switch a week or, you know, switch around, which switches a week, which switches a month, really.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, we've all been in a position. You know, I can remember when I first played a full, I started in the US and I didn't play so good the first 3 months, and I went back to Europe and played the PLM Open, the first tournament that I played over there in 1984 or 85, I think.
85, yep.
And I hit it out of bounds on the first hole, made triple bogey.
I remember they made 7 at Falsterbro, right?
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, I do remember that.
I said, pack your bags, we're going home, and I ended up winning the tournament. So, you know, you never know in this game.
That was 1986, you guys.
1986 it was it? Yeah.
You're better than that, Clayts.
I was 1986. I was rooming with Steve Elkington, and we were watching the TV when Bob Tway held the bunker shot.
Oh.
It was like, Grades and I remember Grades and I were in a motel in Mississippi when Larry Mize chipped in. We watched that, and Elkie and I watched Norman Tway hold the bunker shot. But you're right, it was 86, Pete.
Yep.
So speaking of Norman, Pete, I mean, that's where you came through that really it's just rolling on really, but another strong era in Queensland golf. It was quite a group you came through with through the amateur ranks to get to that stage.
I think we were lucky because Clayts and I think John Kelly, was it? Kelly?
Yep.
And then we had Gary Tozer, we had Richard Lee. There was probably 20 or 30 young guys who were all of a good standard. And I think it comes in cycle sport, and that was our cycle. We had so many good young players. The Interstate Series as amateurs was always a great fight for us because it was full of juniors. And I think it just rolled on from that, and I think that's why we produced so many good players at that time. Is there were so many of them.
Yeah, it was a really interesting. It was a fun time for me to play. I think, for all of us, I think we all competed and lost to each other and beat each other and played and drove each other on. I mean, Grades was. I remember I first saw you play at Glenelg and the Australian Schoolboys. I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, you don't have to say anything, Pete, but I remember watching you hit 6 irons on the range at Glenelg. The first time I was like, I couldn't believe it. It's this 13-year-old kid with both feet in the air, blonde curls, smashing it, like hitting the ball like, who is this kid?
Yeah, but now I'm too heavy. I'd love to swing like that again, but I can't get off the ground.
But, I think it's interesting. I know Brad Hughes, who I follow on Instagram and Twitter, who's very much into the golf swing and the way things... I know people would be critical of your swing because it looked funny at the end. But Brad Hughes goes over. He said, "Here's one of the greatest swings ever." He said, "Watch the way he goes through the ball," and it was so much. You had a great move through the ball, and people underestimate how well you play because it didn't look quite traditional or normal, or it was your own. Funky's not the right word, but it was certainly your own move. But wow, it was effective.
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of guys who've been very different. Trevino and those guys, Fury. Yeah. But you all get. You all grow up with what you got. I mean, not everybody's going to swing it like you, Clay. So,
fortunately for them.
Well, it got to a point where when I was young, I practiced so much that I used to swing up to up, and that's why I used to hit it so straight. And as time got by, I got a little flatter, and then the problem started happening. But as a junior, some of the scores I used to shoot as a junior were phenomenal. And, it all came down to how much you wanted to work at it. And as I said, the competition was good, and I think that's why we all did well.
And did Gary Edwin, whose real name is Gary Player, was he always your coach? Did he sort of kind of work you through that, or did that come later?
No. Well, Gary was at Palm Meadows when I first met him. And I can tell you when I started working for him, it was 1997. It was a Cannon Challenge at Cherry Hills, and I was playing with Peter Lonard in the last round. I couldn't tell you what year. 1997. Yeah, and Lonard, and Gary was following us around, and Lonard never missed a shot in 18 holes. He was just smack down the middle of the fairway, smack on the green, and didn't putt too well. And I was all over the place. I was going through a period where I just hated the way I was playing. And I ended up winning the tournament, even though and we've all had it where we stand on the tee and you don't know where it's going. And it's hard to believe you can win a tournament when you feel like that. And Gary came up to me after the last hole, and he said, "Oh, congratulations, Pete," and da-da-da. And he said, "You don't seem very happy for somebody who's just won the tournament." And I said, I've just lost the enjoyment of the game, Gaz. I said, I really think I want to give it away, because I didn't want to stand on the tee and not know where it was going. And he said to me, "You want to fix it?" And I said, "I'd give anything to fix it." And he said, "Well, come down." And I spent a whole day there, and he had all the old videos of how I used to swing. And then we started to work. And, in no time he had me back on track, and I was enjoying the game again, and gave me a second lease of life. And I think that's why I played so well from 48 to 55, is because I knew what I was doing. And if I did something wrong on the course, I knew that I could fix it. And that means everything to a golfer.
Which takes us up sort of nicely to the 2012 Emirates Australian Open, Pete. I'd love to know your recollection of that one now. People look back and say that was just horrific weather. Obviously, there are a couple of breaks in play. I know you feared you wouldn't get it done in time on the Sunday afternoon. What now that you've dried out and presumably thawed out? What's the memory of that one?
Well, after 3 days, I think I was 2 or 3 shots behind. I think Johnny Sendon was leading. I think Justin Rose was up there as well. He was a couple in front. But going into the last day, I was next on the first tee. And then they called a 3-hour delay because the wind was starting to blow the ball.
Remember the TV tower blew over near the 18th green there?
Yep, exactly.
There were sponsors boards going all over the place.
It was crazy. It was madness, yep.
Yep, and, all the guys, when we were sitting inside, nobody wanted to go out. And then when they made the decision that we were going to go out, it wasn't any different than when we came in. So,
I think Trevor Herden said it dropped down to about 60k, but
but it didn't.
It was very windy. Yeah.
Anyway, Gary Edwin got me on the range while we were warming up, and he got me on the right hand side of the range. The breeze was coming in, sort of off the right hand side, and he just got me to hit these cuts that just didn't deviate. And I just, I played pretty ordinary as far as club selection. I missed a lot of greens, but it was probably the best chipping that I've ever done in my whole life. I never had to work on a par putt. So, and anybody who knows, having a 4 and 5 footer with a strong breeze is the most difficult putt you're going to have. And every time I was in a bunker or I had a chip, I chipped it dead. And I didn't, and coming on the back nine, I knew I turned 2 over, and I knew I had to shoot at least maybe even par 1 under the back nine. And I had to make some birdies early, so I drove it off the 10th hole, which I normally hit probably 2 iron down there and then go in with an 8 iron. But I drove it down there, went in with a sand iron, hit it to about 8 feet and hold it for birdie. And, it probably my driver set me up. I never missed a fairway the whole day. And, in strong wind, I just piped it down the fairway. I birdied the 12th. I held about a 20-footer. And I figured if I could either birdie 13 or 14, I'd have a chance of winning the tournament because I knew the last few holes would be a tough little stretch coming in. I didn't birdie either of those, but I managed to sort of make par all the way in. I had a great shot into the last with a rescue. I was only playing 190 yards, and I hit on the green 2 putts. And, the biggest highlight for me, had my son on the bag winning the Australian Open.
Yeah, Mitch was on the bag, wasn't he? I'm not sure how old he was then.
He would have been early 20s. He's only 23 now, so...
And you did become the oldest ever winner of the Australian Open on that day, 53 years of age, which is it's a big thing to have.
Well, I hold that for the PGA and the Masters as well, so I don't know whether that's a good thing to have.
And
every event.
And the only professional golfer ever to win in this 5 decades, or 70s, 80s, 90s, zeros and 12, 5 decades, which is pretty amazing.
I've been amazed at the tournaments that I've won after the age of 50. And, I can only give it to Gaz for keeping me going. Just in control of what I want to do.
Just going back to that final round again at the Lakes, Pete, there's a guy, I'm not sure if you've heard of him, his name's Tom Watson, shot a 69 in that weather.
Yep.
You and Tom Watson, with all due respect, golfers from a different era when you're in your prime.
Yep.
What does that say about how you learned the game and what the young fellas of today do differently?
Well, Watson played early for a start, so he got through without the really bad weather.
Well, he played it, but he rang me after I finished the round, and he said him and his caddy, Ox, sat there and watched the whole afternoon. And strange for a top line player like that to sit down and watch maybe because the weather was so bad he couldn't get outside. But he said he watched every shot, and he was over the moon that I won. And coming from him, that's a real compliment.
One of the things you did say, I went back through match reports and stuff after that because I was lucky enough to be there, Peter, and you said that you felt like your shortness of stature, if I can put it that way, was actually helpful on a shockingly windy day. I mean, you've got a good hold on the ground, haven't you?
Oh, perfect.
Well, there was only Craig Talley and I who didn't get blown around.
Pads would be hard to shift.
No, I'm not saying anything.
But Pete, you won the Masters when it went back to Huntingdale, and you've mentioned it here already. For anyone to win a career, and I use my inverted commas again, Grand Slam in Australia, because it's clearly not the majors, but to win the Triple Crown, let's call it, is a phenomenal achievement. But you've done it once pre-50 and once after 50. It's unlikely it's a record unlikely ever to be broken.
Well, not having the Masters, it's a shame that we lost the Masters. But,
that's a fair point.
That's a fair point. Yeah,
that's a good point. Thanks for that.
It's but that was another tournament that as soon as the wind started blowing from the south, we had 2 easy days to start. I just kept myself in, but as soon as it blew southerly, and I knew the first hole plays into the wind. Mike, you know how difficult southerly, the 18th hole and there's 16th hole. There's a lot of really good holes. And I figured if I could shoot a couple under, I shot 68 on Saturday, and I think 68, it might have been 68. I'm not 100% sure, but I can remember I said to Mitchell playing the 14th hole, I just birdied 13, and I hit a close shot into 10 with the rescue, hit it to about 6 inches on the 10th hole, which kicked my 9 off. And then I birdied 13, and I hit driver 3-wood just down 20 yards short of the green on 14. I said to Mitch, mate, if we can birdie this hole, because I hadn't seen the leaders board. And I said, if we can birdie this hole and then hang on coming home, I said, we'll have a shot at winning this. So I did make birdie there. I parred 15. I got on 16, and it's the first leaders board that I saw. It's on the right-hand side of the green. And I looked at it, and I'm 3 shots in front. And I've been driving it like a beauty every hole. And normally 17, it's a lot easier driving hole now than it ever was when we played early. Clayts, wasn't it?
Well, I was never a driver. It was always an iron down there, wasn't it, really?
So every day I've been pumping, and I shit myself, and I said to Mitch, give us a 3-wood, mate. It's straight in the bloody trees. So it's funny how certain things can affect your decision. You know, normally I drove it down every fairway, middle of every fairway. Why change? I mean, 17 now is a wide driving hole for me.
Yeah.
And I took 3-wood out, hit it in the trees, and was lucky I got a shot to chip it out. Made 5, and then...
Well, in 18, you made one of the best up and downs I've ever seen under that pressure, wasn't it? From the back left bunker at Huntingdale 18.
Well, yeah, I hit 5-iron for my second shot, and you know, it just came out hot. I knew it was going to be long, but when it went into the back bunker, I had the perfect lie. It was a little downhill, so I could run it up that big slope. Even though I got it to about 8 or 9 feet, it was still a difficult putt down the green. But you know, I was fortunate enough to make it. But you know, just to win anything is always a buzz. To win late in your career is even a bigger buzz.
And what's happening with your life now, Pete? What are you doing? You said in 2016 Australian Open, you said you're not going to play any more tournaments, which was sort of, in your terms, a retirement, but not really. You know, it was a sort of a retirement with an asterisk. You're still playing some golf, aren't you?
I went down to Melbourne for a couple of weeks. I'm playing mainly seniors events, just pro-ams, a few bits and pieces. I'm coming down to Sydney area next week for about a month to play quite a few events down there, just to get away, just to play. But as far as 4-round tournaments, I've got no real inhibition to sort of put the spikes back on and grind it out for 4 days. But I have been playing pretty good at the moment, so I was thinking of playing the PGA only because it's just down the road from me.
Pete, I don't know if it's fair to say this or not. I mean, you weren't, you know, the most beloved golfer in that early sort of Greg Norman era until you started winning. Was it a real surprise to you, or did it not come as any surprise to you at all, that by the time you started winning all these events later in your career, you were easily among the most popular players on tour? And I know the retirement that Blakey was talking about there last year, it almost had a sort of a great air of respect for your career about it.
Well, what shortened my career, I was injured over in America.
A bad hip, didn't you?
Yeah, well, it sort of went down. I had feet problem to start with, which caused the hip problem, and then I had both elbows. I had elbow problems, but the problem was I had no status over there, so I was playing injured, and I was just not happy with the way things were going, and you know, it got to a point where I just had enough of. I played about 12 months injured, and I said to my wife, you know, I've had enough of this. I think we'll go home, because I never thought it was going to get better. And then I came home. I played the New South Wales Open, but really struggled to get around there. And then I played the Open, and I pulled out after the sort of few holes the second round. No, I just couldn't swing it. So, you know, I came back home here and pretty much didn't do anything for about 4 or 5 months, and the body fixed itself up. And, you know, I still enjoy playing the game, and that's what I'm doing now.
Did it warm your heart to get that sort of reverence, though, in the end, towards the end of your career?
If I hadn't been injured, I'd probably still be on the Champions Tour in America. I enjoyed that tour so much, probably the best tour I've ever played on, as far as the way people treat you, the respect of the guys. It was just a great tour. Very competitive though. You know, the guys can still play golf, and it's you know, and there's so many good younger guys now. I mean, you got to make your period is 50 to 58. And now you've got guys like Steve Stricker, David Toms, all those guys coming out now, and it's a really tough field to be in now.
6 times a runner-up on that tour, 3 losses in playoffs. Does it gut you that you didn't quite get over the line?
Yeah, it did. I had my chances, not only in those ones that I lost the playoff, but it wasn't that I choked coming down the last few holes. I just didn't do anything. And in those tournaments over there, you've got to make birdies coming down the stretch, and I just made pars all the time. I was disappointed that I didn't win the regions when I lost to Tom Lehman in a playoff. He got it up and down from an almost impossible position on the last hole, and so there was a lot of bits and pieces, but I just didn't do enough coming down the stretch to win.
What do you make of the future of the tour here, Pete? You were the chairman of the board, I think, for a while, and where do you see the pro golf in Australia in 20 years, in terms of what we're playing here and how we keep developing young players and giving them opportunities here to make a bank and go away and afford to be able to play overseas?
Well, the hardest thing now, Clayts, is getting on a tour.
Yeah, absolutely.
For us, when we first went to Europe, we qualify on a Monday, you shoot 75 and you get in the tournament because there was so many spots. Now you've got 4 tour schools up in Japan to get on the tour. Very hard to get in America now because you've got to go through the nationwide tour. Europe's the same. You've got 2 or 3 qualifyings. So for the young guys, and there's so many of them, to bring that game out to qualify, you've just got to be fortunate to get through these qualifyings. Playing pro-ams is not good enough for our guys. We've got a lot of small tournaments, but not enough for these guys to get a little bit of money to sort of do anything with. And I think that's an area that we're going to have to look at. It's very hard to generate money in Australia. Television's our biggest problem. We're the only country in the world that pays for television. And, it makes it very difficult to make purses and attract people to get enough interest in the game here. The young guys have got they've got an uphill battle. To get on any tour is very difficult.
We were talking earlier on, Pete, before you joined us, about the potential dates in the calendar for the Australian Open. Have you got a thought on when would best find its place?
Well, it's no good in the middle of the year. The only time is where it is. We've been fortunate that we've had so many of our guys come back every year. Allenby's, Appleby's, Jeff Ogilvy. All the guys used to come back and support our events, and that's the only thing that we can hope, that they actually come back and support the events. And it's hard. They play all year. They want a little bit of time off because the US tour starts so early. Well, it's even started now.
Never stops.
So it's they nearly play every week. So they've got no downtime, and now they've all got families. It makes it more difficult for them to come back and support our events. So it's going to be an uphill grind for our golf in Australia.
Sort of sad to hear that. Let's hope. I mean, we've got enough talent coming through to make a splash still in the rest of the world, but let's hope that we can continue to do that domestically. Pete, we really appreciate your time. We could sit and talk to you for 1,000 hours. I know you're a very busy man, but to speak to someone who's won so many times around Australia, it's an incredible career. You've had 34 professional wins, 4 in Europe, 3 in Japan, 2.5 million around Australia, and the 2 that we're most fond of on this program here, the 2 Australian Opens. Congratulations, and thanks for being a part of the program.
Good on you guys. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Hi, this is Sherelle McMahon. Swing Fit is the fun, healthy, social way for women to get started in golf. You'll learn the basics of the golf swing and how to putt over a 6-week program, and get your whole body moving through yoga and Pilates-style exercises. You don't need any golf knowledge or equipment. Simply turn up in comfy clothing and get started. You'll be surrounded by like-minded people and receive constant support. So get outdoors, meet new friends, and learn a sport that you can play for the rest of your life. To find a program near you, visit swingfit.com.au.
Hi, my name is Soyan Yu, who play on the LPGA Tour, and I love Vegemite, but I love Cedro more than Vegemite.
Now we're joined by another special guest on Inside the Ropes, a very prominent West Australian among many who are making waves in the world of golf at the moment. and we're joined by Jarryd Felton, who's deep in preparations for, now wait for it, Clayts, the Nexus Risk TSA Group WA Open on the ISPS Handa PGA Tour of Australasia. What do you think of that? Thanks, Clayts. We appreciate that.
Terrific.
Now, Jarryd, I introduced you 20 minutes before I started the title, but no, we're really grateful for Nexus Risk TSA Group joining the WA Open, and we're very grateful for you coming on board Inside the Ropes. I understand you've been a regular listener.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the show's taken off ever since it started, and yeah, it's been a great listen to.
Are you nervous about what we might get you at here? You have heard all the praise we've had for Hannah.
I'm very nervous.
How do you overcome these nerves out in the golf course, mate? That's where you're in your home zone. You're a renowned practicer, and you've had a very successful start to your own professional career. We won't hassle you about Hannah just yet.
No, it's been good. Obviously, the more you play, the more the nerves go away. So I'm starting to become a bit more confident, a bit more comfortable out there. So yeah, just getting on with it.
Are you doing any tour schools this year? Which is the obvious question for young pros who are.
So a week after the Open, I'm heading to second stage of Europe.
Okay, right. So you're exempt into the second stage?
Yeah, yep.
Beautiful. So where are they playing that?
That's in Spain.
Where in Spain?
There's 4 courses.
Okay.
So yeah, you just get drawn out of a hat, and whichever one you get, you got to head on over to.
Any other mates you're going over there with for that?
Well, I've got one of my mates from my golf club. He's going to caddy for me. So, but yeah, there's a few Aussies going over. So hopefully we get paired up at a couple of the courses, and we can stay together and sort it all out.
And Europe, not America. Talk us through that one, Jarryd.
I went to both last year, and the second stages clash. So you can't do second stage of Webb and second stage of Europe. So I chose Webb last year, didn't succeed, and really just didn't enjoy it as much. So I'm going to give Europe a go this year.
So philosophically, you think Europe might fit you better from a personal point of view as well?
Yeah, definitely. And obviously with the Australian tour now, with all the events we've got now co-sanctioned with Europe, it's kind of a no-brainer, really. If we can get our European tour card and guarantee those starts on the Aussie tour and those European co-sanctioned events, then yeah, we can definitely got more of a chance of retaining a card.
Does being in Perth factor into that, mate? Does it make you think, it's really hard to play in the States if you ever want to come home, and it's cheaper to get to, or quicker to get to, the Middle East and Asia and Europe itself?
Definitely Asia, obviously, because it's so close for us. But I mean, it's by the time you get to London from Perth, it's 20, 25 hours or something. Add another 4 on from Melbourne. It's not really 4 hours these days. It's not really that much. We're kind of used to the travel, so it doesn't really factor in the travel as much. It's just, probably more so the co-sanctioning with the Aussie tour with Europe now is just so strong.
Plus, I guess Qantas have that one stop now, don't they, from Perth to London?
Yes, that comes in March. March of next year. It's going to be 18 hours direct.
Which would be pretty nice for you. It'd be perfect, really.
Yeah, it would be perfect. Just one plane, straight to London.
Magnificent. Jarryd, you've had that, what I've described previously about other people, a very happy knack. You're not ever too far away, I wouldn't say, but you bob, when you bob up into contention, you have a very happy knack of saluting, winning tournaments when you get into the mix in the final day. Why is that possible for you, as opposed to others who can battle away for years and not salute?
I'm not too sure why that is the case, but I guess playing a lot of the professional tournaments as an amateur definitely helps, just getting and playing golf with the pros, and I guess feeling comfortable when you're out there and not feeling as if you don't belong. And then obviously when you turn pro, it's just a title really, and you're just going out there to try and win the golf tournament. And yeah, I've just felt comfortable since day one really.
Mate, you've won the New Zealand the PGA this year, and you also won the New South Wales PGA back in 2015. You've made bigger checks than both those two in other results without winning. What's more important to you as a young pro? Is it just getting the wolves from the door with the cash, or is it actually getting those titles on your resume?
I'd say the titles, definitely. Lifting trophies is probably one of the best feelings as a professional golfer. Obviously, saying that you won the event is a fantastic feeling, and holding the trophy. Obviously, winning the cash is great, but I think holding trophies is definitely number one goal.
Hey, Jarryd, how does Royal Perth fit your eye this week? Because I'm not sure which club you came out of in Perth, but I'm sure you played there many times. How does it fit?
So I'm out of Gosnells Golf Club, which is it's about 20 minutes south of Royal Perth. But Royal Perth's a great course. Head superintendent there, Michael Dennis, obviously been a state player for numerous years. He always gets the course in magnificent condition. Greens always rolling really fast. It's quite tight, but because it's in such a small area, all the holes are really close together, so you can kind of a bomber's paradise. You can kind of bomb away and be on the other fairway, so it's not too bad in that regard.
And one of the things, I said we'd delay the grief that we were going to give to you about Hannah Green, but for those who don't know, Jarryd's partner is Hannah Green. They've been together for quite a long time now. Hannah's pegging it up in the WA Open, Jarryd, and I understand you might be just a little bit nervous that she might just get the better of you.
I'm very nervous, don't worry.
Are you legitimately nervous, or are you just saying that to keep the peace?
No, I'm legitimately nervous.
Is it because of the course? Because of the short nature, the small footprint of the land there?
Yeah, definitely. Royal Perth isn't long, but it is quite tight, and obviously Hannah hits it straight, and I may hit a few offline.
Mind you, it's long by LPGA standards. For those who don't know, LPGA stands for lob wedge, pitching wedge, gap wedge all day tour, because they insist on playing 6,500-yard courses, which is a joke when you consider Lexi Thompson hits at 280 yards. So, what's Royal Perth? 6,700 yards probably. So 6'2" meters, 6'1".
If that, yeah. I know Hannah played around Royal Freo, which is probably a little bit longer, and she struggled a bit with the length there, but I don't think she'll struggle at all around Royal Perth with the length.
Hey, Jarryd, are you surprised at what she's done? She's won 3 years on her first year on the Symetra Tour in America, and obviously locked up her card for next year LPGA. Does that surprise you? Because I can remember talking to people about Hannah in Golf Australia, sort of amateur circles 3 or 4 years ago, and they weren't quite sure whether she really wanted to get out and be a pro golfer and stuff like that. So it seems to me that she's really gathered momentum a little bit later than some of the others.
I wouldn't say I'm surprised. I knew she always had the game, and she's always had the work ethic to be able to do it, but she was playing amateur golf in a pretty competitive stage there. I mean, you had Sue and Minjee.
Suo and Minjee Lee, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look where they are right now. They're already on the LPGA, so she was obviously playing good golf, but she was up against some pretty high-quality players, so it was tough to kind of get your name out there as much. But
so I guess if she was sort of struggling to compete with those two in particular, she was thinking, well, am I good enough? She was maybe questioning whether she was actually good enough.
I wouldn't say she was struggling. She was still playing really well. It was because they were maybe a little bit higher up in the rankings and stuff. But she had obviously Minjee turned pro, and then Hannah kicked on from there. She was winning everything, representing Australia. Obviously went to tour school, missed out, and then sat down and had a plan to go out there on the Symetra Tour and get a tour card. And that's what she's done. She's done really well.
And have you caddied for her a few times, different places?
Yeah, I actually managed to pop over when she was playing in New York, and I watched her play, and yeah, she's definitely grown up to be a great young girl.
What's going to happen at home, mate, if she beats you? Let all the listeners in on this.
I may retire.
This could be the end. This could be the end of Jarryd Felton.
She's not beating him. Just come on, seriously.
You reckon he's just playing this?
Of course he is. He beat her by 5 shots around.
Wow,
that's a big call.
Come on, mate. You know that. Well, 260s. If she shot 272s and you shot 267s, that's what you should shoot there. And 272s for her would be pretty good off the men's tours at Royal Perth, wouldn't it? Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You take 272s for sure.
Yeah, and you can shoot 267s there without any problem at all.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, there you go. Clayts has reinstilled your confidence. That's good to hear.
Yeah, Clayts has given me the confidence booster.
You'll be fine, mate. Don't stress about it.
He'll build you up. I'll chop you down. No, I would never do that to you, mate. No.
What do you talk about when you're at home? Do you talk about golf all the time, or do you talk about everything else but golf?
Obviously, it's hard not to talk about golf, but we try and keep away from it as much as we can. But yeah, it's kind of obviously she's coming home now, and she's obviously trying to plan for the rest of the year. She'll have a bit of time off, and then obviously next year is going to be pretty full on, and hopefully for myself it'll be full on as well. So yeah, who knows what can happen.
How do long distance relationships work in this era when it's so much easier to communicate. I mean, when I was married, but Debbie and I were, she was on the other side of the world, but I remember sending telexes, which for people who remember what telexes were, they weren't the best way to communicate. And phone calls cost fortunes and, flying home was expensive. And now the world's such a small place that I'm assuming it's much easier to have a relationship with someone when you're on opposite sides of the world. Just Skype and phone calls are cheaper and emails and, it must be so much easier to stay in touch.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot easier. You got Facebook and Skype and FaceTime, all that sort of stuff, and you just call. No problem. It's just using the internet now. So, yeah, it's not a problem at all.
Clayts, would have been pretty hard to send a racy telex.
A racy telex, yeah. Stop. Dot. Need sex. Stop.
I didn't do that.
I knew we'd go down this path at some stage, Jarryd.
Yeah.
Mate, tell us about the Nexus Risk TSA Group WA Open Field. It's a beauty. It's an absolute beauty as I scramble to get this ship straightened out again. There's a whole heap of excellent Australian professionals there, most notably all the quality European Tour players from Western Australia specifically.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I think Scriv and Rummy are coming back. Gossie's coming home, and so is Curtis. So obviously you got Jimmy and all the other boys playing. So it's actually a really quality field. It's going to be a great event.
How do you rate your chances? In all honesty, we've joked about Hannah's place in the field, but you are a legitimate contender here, coming off a bit of a breather after Fiji, where you played pretty well. Yeah, I played well in Fiji and then played okay at Darwin, and it's been good to kind of have a bit of a break. I was Cook for about 2 weeks. I didn't move too much, but I definitely rate my chances pretty highly. I enjoy Royal Perth and hopefully get off to a good start. And you're back, mate. It's probably hasn't come out too much, I suppose, in your professional career because you've managed it beautifully. But towards the end of your amateur career, you had probably a recurrence at least of a pretty serious back injury. And I understand your coaches and your medical staff at the time basically said you had to work 4 times harder in the gym than anyone else just to keep those problems at bay. Is that still the case? Yeah, definitely. I still have ongoing problems with my hip. Both my hips, obviously, when I was young, I had some issues there and some surgeries, so my back kind of plays up a bit. But I've definitely learnt to manage it a lot better. Playing amateur golf in the US and Europe and flying around definitely taught me how to manage it better for my pro career. It's definitely getting better. And mate, I understand. You've been a tremendous representative on Golf Western Australia teams over the years before you turned pro. We've asked everyone else this question, so it'd be probably rude of us not to ask you. You just mentioned a wave of people coming through, plus all the amateurs still on the books there, and including and probably highlighted by Min Woo Lee. What's going on over there? I guess it's because we're all just such close mates. We've got great coaches over here, and we just push each other. Obviously, Curtis is out there playing PGA Tour events this year, and we all want to get out there. So we all want to try and beat Curtis, and obviously he's back playing the WA Open next week, so we want to try and test ourselves against him this week. And obviously Gossie was out there playing web.com and coming back, and Rummy and Scriv on European Tour. So the guys who we've played against in amateur golf are all out there doing it, so why can't we, I guess, and work harder and get on there ourselves. Have you had a chat to Ollie just before we let you go? I haven't spoken to him too much since he's been back, but definitely looking forward to catching up with him. I can't wait to talk to him at some stage this summer. Ollie Goss, yeah. Yeah, it's just a fascinating story, Ollie Goss. I mean, he sort of burst onto the scene 5 or 6 years ago in the Australian Masters at Kingston Heath, I believe it was. Yeah, we played with Adam Scott and Graham McDowell. That's right, yeah. And he sort of slowly but surely sort of faded away a little bit from national prominence, but he still seems to have that fire in the belly, so I can only assume that he's going to put his best foot forward at Royal Perth. Yeah, definitely. It just shows how fickle professional golf is. He had his events on the PGA Tour, just missed out on a card. On the web.com tour, just missed out on the playoff series 1 year, then didn't retain his card, and then played in Canada, and then it's just kind of been a spiral down. But yeah, it just shows you how fickle professional golf is and how much it takes to that next step, and then how quickly you can go back down. Yeah, and we saw Curtis Luck win this tournament last year and really kick it on. So we hope for your sake, mate, and others around you in the young developing Western Australian golf community that you can take that next step next week at Royal Perth. And we'd like to thank you very much, Jarryd Felton, not only today but for your young career, and we wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for having me.
See you, Jarryd.
Thanks, mate.
G'day, I'm My Golf Ambassador Jason Day. I'm really excited to be an ambassador for My Golf, Australian Golf's national junior program, jointly run by Golf Australia and the PGA. My Golf is every Aussie kid's first step on their golfing pathway. It's all about teaching children the basic skills of golf in a safe and healthy environment, and just as importantly, about the life skills that golf can teach you that distinguish our sport from the rest. Remember to visit mygolf.org.au for more information.
Hi, this is Aaron Price, and October is Golf Month. Golf Month is the perfect time to share with your family and friends, so get out there this October and have a go.
Welcome back to Inside the Ropes, and it's time now really to whip around the world and bring everyone up to date with all the goings-on from all the different tours that we can scrape up a few morsels of information from. Clayts, I know that you have particular interest in some of the courses in Scotland. An amazing week at the Dunhill Links Trophy around some great courses in that part of the world. A 61 course record for Ross Fisher at the old course at St Andrews. Never been done. And it's an extraordinary score. Out in 29 he was. That's some sort of golf.
Tony Juckman went out in 29 in 1970, so it wasn't like it hasn't been done before. Curtis Strange shot 62 30 years ago, probably, in the Dunhill Cup. So it's no wind. It's not a long course by today's standards. And it's a Pro-Am. So even though the last day is not a Pro-Am, it's still kind of amateur speeds on the greens, and the course is clearly set up easier than it would be for an Open. And it's a vulnerable golf course. So I thought Tommy Fleetwood's 63 at Carnoustie, even though that's not set up for an Open either, is it? I mean, that's a brutally hard course, Carnoustie.
That could be the hardest course in the world.
One of them. But again, it depends if the wind blows. I mean, no decent links course is difficult in calm weather, because if they're difficult in calm weather, they're unplayable in windy weather. So they're always going to be vulnerable when the weather's good.
So Gary Player came out and said that it was sad that the old course was being ravaged like that. Do you think it has a significance that someone can go around there in 61, even on a still day?
Well, I don't think 61's...
He was talking about the technology.
Yeah, and we're in furious agreement on that, but
yeah.
It wasn't so much the 61, because Strange had shot 62 and Jacken had shot 29 in 1970, so it wasn't like those scores weren't possible. It was that 3/4 of the field shot 68 or better.
Yeah, I think only a handful of guys over par.
Victor Dubuchon shot a 63.
Yeah, but I mean 68 was par, and really, it goes back to the eternal question of what we're going to do about the golf ball.
Yeah,
and at some point, people say they're never going to do anything. At some point, they're going to have to do something, because Alistair Mackenzie said in 920, there's no limit to science, and there's no limit to. I mean, people thought John Daly was amazing in 1991 when he blew that PGA away. They couldn't believe how far he drove the ball. Now everyone drives the ball that far or further. And people are now stunned by the latest group of hitters. I mean, Cameron Champ, US amateur champion, who Jeff Shackelford watched at the Walker Cup at LA Country Club a couple of weeks ago and said, effortlessly flies at 360 yards in the air. So in 20 years' time, where's the game going to be? All these great courses are going to be even more irrelevant. And if the measure is how Alistair Mackenzie and the great architects wanted those courses to play, if that's the measure, then none of them are playing remotely close to the type of golf their great architects wanted them to show off. So that at some point, someone who runs the game is going to have to do something about the golf ball, because it's not going to go backwards by a lack of action. So players right. I mean the game, it's easier to play because the heads are so much bigger. I went and played this week with a Persimmon driver, and you think you're driving the ball well when you're using this frying pan, because every shot just comes off. It looks like a decent shot. You go and take out an old Tony Penner 1978 model, and you go, yeah, it's not very pretty. I mean, the good shots are good, but
so it's not just the ball, is it? It's a combination. The size of the head, the ball, the players being a lot fitter and stronger.
Well, and the ease with which you can swing the club for an athletic player, the ease with which you can swing a light, long club with a big head and a ball that goes straight at 120 miles an hour with almost impunity.
I think it'll be forced on them, Clayton.
Well, I think it will.
There'll be a change.
I think
cricket's just changing,
I think they've changed the bats.
Yeah.
I think Erin Hills was the first. For those who hadn't seen it, that was the first light bulb moment. That 8,000 yards and Brooks Koepka didn't hit a club longer than a 7-iron in one round. That was a light bulb moment. A bit.
That's the US Open course. For
US, 8,000 yards long. Brandon Grace is 62 at the Open. When again, it wasn't so much the 62 that was an amazing round. Was it for the first time in history in the Open Championship? 66 was just a blah round. It was just that was what I mean. Not half the field. There was a lot of blokes shot 66 that day.
Yeah.
And then 61 at the old course. People are, I mean, it's now, as Shakov had said the other day on the State of the Game podcast, he said, I'm not the only one banging on about it. People are coming and saying, this is getting out of hand. And the last people that, I mean, I'm sure they see it. In fact, I know they see it. When you turn the tape recorder off, they see it. They'll admit it, the R&A and the USGA, but how do they tackle the threat of the equipment company suing them?
There's 13,300 professional rounds at the old course, and that's the lowest one we've had, so things are definitely changing. Tyrrell Hatton.
And it's not so much the score, because you can always manipulate the score by making the greens crazy fast or crazy hard. It's the clubs they hit. I tweeted I was reading Mark McCormack's annual the other day of Arnold Palmer's first round in the 1969 US Open.
I saw that.
It was a 7,000 yards course, and it was a day of 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 irons with 1 9-iron shot. Dean Beeman, who finished second that week, shot 68 in the first round. He hit irons into 3 par 4s. He had woods into every other hole.
These guys are only hitting long. The only reason they need long irons at all is to hit second shot on par 5.
Par 5s, well, I was going to say tee shots on the occasional narrow par 4, but the way they play now is it's bombs away because you can get closer to the flag from out of the rough from 50 yards away than you can from the fairway from 110 yards away. So why lay up? Anyway.
Hard to argue with any of that. Clayts, again, furious agreement.
It was funny. You keep banging on about it and people get tired of it. But I met a bloke from the R&A years ago in England. He said, I've read a bit what you've written. He said, I totally agree. He said, just keep banging away. Just keep banging them over the head with it. So, if Alistair McKenzie was alive, he'd just be going crazy. I mean, there was a guy, the greatest architect ever, who built these treasured golf courses, and if he came back and saw how they were playing, he'd walk into the R&A and say, well, what are you thinking about?
So further to that, Tyrrell Hatton was the winner there, only in my inverted commas again, Craig, shot a 66 to close the tournament at 24 under. So it's just he's playing some of the great courses. I know they're set up for Pro-Ams, but it's a monumental score, and he romped home. The first to defend the title in that event, and his first 2 professional wins have been both at the Alfred Dunhill Links, Blakey.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention Rory McIlroy, who didn't win, obviously. It's a winless season for Rory, who's taking a break now, and just it's surprising. When he came out and won the Australian Open here in that very good year that he had, he reeled in Adam Scott on the last hole, and you just looked at him then, and he won his most recent major at the end of 2014, which is the PGA. He's in a lull, isn't he? I know that he won the FedEx Cup last year, the meaningless sort of, back up the truck trophy, but he just hasn't surged ahead as much as I thought he looked like he would. Is it that the Justin Thomases and the Spieths have caught up to him and overtaken him, or he's been playing with an injury this year, which he said that he wants to get right? That's obviously been a bit of a factor. But Rory, he did look like he was going to be an absolutely awesome, dominating player. And he's not.
I think he's still. I mean, I'd be amazed if he didn't win 8 majors at least by the time he's finished. And Nicholas had, he had a run of 68, 69 where he didn't win majors. So a 1 year is kind of you can forget. I mean, he had a cracked rib, I think, in South Africa, and then he played too early and did it again. And so he's had an injury interrupted year. And the connection between that Australian Open win and here was that he'd been winless that year as well. I caddied for Ryan Ruffles in a practice. He played with Rory, and I writing at the time for Golf Australia's website saying it's not immediately apparent why Rory McIlroy hasn't won a tournament this year. I mean, he was ripping it.
Yeah.
And he won that week. And you watch him play and go, how does anyone beat this guy when he's playing well? Great swing, hits the ball miles, good putter. I mean, obviously can play under the pressure. So, I don't think he's over by a long way. But, no. I mean, Brandel Chambly the other day was talking about Jim. He said, you're not going to be a great player in the gym. You're not going to become a great player in the gym. And he said, I'll watch Tiger Woods, the greatest player ever, in his view, destroy his body in the gym. I mean, lithe was the word he used. And you watch Roger Federer still playing arguably the best tennis player in the world, still at 35 or 6, with a lithe, thin, flexible body.
Yeah.
If Tiger Woods still looked like Roger Federer, which is what Tiger looked like when he came out here in 1996, I think Tiger would still be a great player.
Yeah.
But in Chamberlain's words, he utterly destroyed his body.
What does it do? Like if you pump yourself up and you get the V-shaped upper body, which McIlroy does have, what is it? Why can't you play golf?
I don't know. I've never done it, but I assume I don't know. One, they're always injured. I mean, Tiger was always Pat Cash when Pat Cash's aim was to be the fittest athlete in the world, or certainly in tennis, was always injured. Greg was always in the gym and always injured. Sam Snead, never in the gym, never injured. Jack Nicklaus, the heaviest thing, someone said the heaviest thing Jack Nicklaus ever lifted was an ice cream. Rory in the gym, always injured. So, I'm sure there were people who know about this stuff who would disagree with what I'm saying, but there's surely a connection between bulking up and not playing as well as you might otherwise play. I mean, sure you need to be fit and strong, but I mean, to me, if I was looking at the future of pro golf, I would go and watch. My wife dragged me along to the ballet a few months ago because Ross Herbert's daughter, who was the late and much loved coach of the AIS golf program, his daughter's in the Australian Ballet, and you watch ballet dancers dance and how athletic and strong they are. Surely that is the way to go, rather than looking like Tiger Woods. I mean, if you came out and you were as fit and strong as a ballet dancer with as much control over their bodies as they have, and you're a golfer, surely that's the next step in fitness in golf, is to start looking like a ballet dancer, not look like a Michelin man.
Well, Justin Thomas, how much is he? Has he about 70 kilo or something?
75 kilos.
He's got that body.
Yeah.
So I thought you wouldn't have had to ask the question about the importance of a big V. Like, surely
V-shaped upper body.
Your mirror.
Well, I've sort of got it, but there's this kind of a bulge. It's not required. Isn't it? Yeah.
And just wrapping up before, we better keep moving away from the Dunhill links, but just wrapping up the Australians there, Reen Gibson was tied 25th after a pair of closing 68s. He's had a pretty ordinary year by his standards, so that was good to see. But he's still 13 shots behind Tyrrell Hatton. Jason Scrivener 8 under and Matt Giles 3 under. And unfortunately, Clayt's Marcus Fraser DQ'd among a host of other Australians who didn't necessarily finish the tournament. He didn't even finish the second round correctly, but it was still entitled to play his third round because he's partnering Ian Botham as his amateur.
Nothing worse than having to play a round when you're not actually in the tournament.
No.
I mean, once you're DQ'd, the last thing you want to do is be hacking around.
Do we know what happened? Was it a card issue?
He signed for an incorrect card in his second round, then had to peg it up with Ian Botham.
He wasn't making the cut anyway, was he?
No, I don't think he was going to. So I don't think it was, he was crueling him or anything. But at least Ian Botham may be a good, fun character to play with.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know him, but I assume he...
But then I suppose Marcus Fraser doesn't need the practice.
I'm not sure if you're Ian Chappell, you might want to be in that group. But
Well, still in Britain, we had the New South Wales amateurs and pros in waiting. Travis Smythe and Harrison Endicott both managed to play all the rounds of Stage 1 of the European Tour Q School, but neither could advance past the first stage, finishing at 49th and 42nd respectively. But in better news, and a name we sort of have glossed over for quite a while now, Brady Watt, 71, 76, 69, 69 at Frilford Heath, Clayts. Of course, I'm sure you probably know a little bit about.
I don't, but if it's a Heathland course in London, it's good, because they're all good.
And that was enough for T10, and he advanced to the second stage. Especially good considering the last round scores there under pressure with the Night of the Future. He's really battled, Blakey. I know that we had high hopes for him from a Golf Australia perspective since he was the number one amateur in the world in June 2013. Seems a long time ago now, and he lost to good mate and fellow WA amateur Ollie Goss for a spot in the 2013 US Amateur final.
Yeah.
He's only made 2 cuts on the Latino America Tour this year, and he's banked the princely sum of US $787.50.
Well, you mentioned Ollie Goss before in terms of talented young pro gets out on a particular tour and then struggles. But Nathan Holman's another one that I've been watching.
That's bizarre.
He won the Australian PGA a couple of years ago. He's over in Europe, which gave him sort of status in Europe. But some of these guys, they just hit the wall, don't they, Clayton?
He's had a horrible year. I mean, just like not even close to making cuts. It's a bizarre game whether you get the yips with the driver. I remember playing with Pete Senior when Pete had the chipping yips in Royal Queenstown, 1984 Queensland. He couldn't get the ball in the green from anywhere. He was it was the point where I'm going to give up golf. I can't. He was putting from the grassy banks on bunkers, and it was frightening how bad he was. And he went cross-handed and he just figured it out. So golf's a game of figuring it out. But when you lose it, wow! you can driver yips, chipping yips, putting yips. If you get on the wrong side of that stuff, you're in big trouble.
Well, someone who's figured it out is Kurt Barnes. We heard Pete Senior talk about his magnificent rounds at Kingston Heath in the '89 Australian Open. My best round I've ever seen anyone play live, walking around with them, was Kurt Barnes, 64 in a IFQ at Kingston Heath. 64 at Kingston Heath, just extraordinary. It was the hardest and fastest I've ever seen those greens. Kurt Barnes, an immense talent. He's still just showing a lot in Japan. T14, $17,000 in his kick. Brad Kennedy, David Branson, Aaron Townsend, all bank checks up on the Japan Golf Tour, which is coming to the pointy end of its season. There's still a handful of events left up there. Kennedy and Todd Sinnott going really well on the money list, so that's great news. We touched on it earlier about the CIMB Classic. An important week, Blakey, this time around for Scott Hend, who's just continuing his jet-setting all around the universe. This is a jointly sanctioned Asian Tour, PGA Tour event, and he's second on the Asian Tour money list.
Yeah, well, that's an Asian event. So that's a big one for him. What interested me with that was that we talk about the sort of scheduling of tournaments. That's a $7 million US tournament, that event, part of the US Tour. No DJ, no McIlroy, no Day, no Spieth. So just putting $7 million up doesn't necessarily guarantee
anyway.
That would be. They'd be disappointed with that field, given prize money.
But you would expect that field. I mean,
they're resting. All the good players are resting.
$7 million is for
not
those
enough.
guys is nothing. I mean,
ho-hum another week.
I mean, Thomas is playing because he won
He's
last
defending.
year, I assume.
Yeah, that's right. He's won the last two. Yeah.
So it's
two-time defending champ.
The other big guys are not there. Stenson, not there.
Still in Asia, we move to the second part of the Asian swing. Clayts on the LPGA Tour for the year. We start the Hana Bank Classic in Korea this week.
Which is really the sixth major for the women's golf. I mean, we were talking about the Evian the other day. I mean, this is a better course, a better tournament than the Evian. This is really it's a big deal in Asia this week. So all the best Koreans are playing at home. I was there a couple of years ago. It's a great crowds. It's not a great course, but it's decent. Fantastic tournament.
Yeah, Minjee Lee's playing in that event. Minjee's had 8 top 10s this year, I believe, but no wins. So she would be definitely looking for a win soon. Sue O is playing, who had a good finish in the New Zealand Open. She's had a pretty solid year. Sue, you've had a lot to do with her. Clayts, she's obviously made swing changes with Cameron McCormack, and she's
right.
Catherine Kirk, who's our only winner on the tour this year, is playing, and Sarah Jane Smith. Kari Webb not playing. Kari's outside the top 72 get into the Tour Championship at the moment, but she's got a little bit of time to address
these
that.
are all limited field events coming up, I think, so she's going to find it really hard from here. The first of 5 events in Asia after a week off after the New Zealand, and that China event was cancelled from this part of the schedule, I believe, Clayton.
No government permit. Apparently no local government. The local government needed to give the tournament a permit, I think, and didn't. So the Rainwood tournament, which was a big tournament. So
yeah, it's extraordinary.
It's bad loss. But I assume if Kari wanted to play, she could get invites to play. But if you get invites into these tournaments, the money doesn't count in the main list.
All right.
So you can get invitations, but the money doesn't count. So
why is that?
Well, because someone who was outside the...
Are you taking someone else's spot?
Well, not taking their spot so much, but if the money was counting, say a Korean player, for as an example, was 101st on the main list and not exempt, get an invite, the money, there's no cut, the money counts, so she knocks someone out who can't play the tournament so the money doesn't count.
That's fair enough. And closer to home, we've already spoken to Jarryd Felton. But the Australian Tour sort of kicks into full gear from this week coming up. We've got the PGA Tour of Australasia starts in Perth, and then we go up to Brisbane, a couple of weeks off, head to the New South Wales Open, and then we're into the Australian Open and the Australian PGA Championship. So it's coming around to the pointy end of the season, Blakey, and some great fields starting to assemble for the state events, which is good to see too.
Absolutely, and we went through that WA Open field before. That's most excellent.
And my just little shout out to Louis Dobler, who we all should have in our little black books. He saluted in the Jack Newton International Junior Classic, which is the flagship event on the Jack Newton Junior Golf Tour. Louis, who's the Cam Smith Scholarship holder and still just 16, fired a 5-under total at Hunter Valley at the Cypress Lakes course. Don't know much about Cypress Lakes Clates, to be honest, but he's only 1 to 4 under par, still 16, an incredible young talent. Recently won the the 16-17 age category at the Gary Player Classic in Queensland too. So Louis making some good progress.
He playing the Australian Open? Do we know?
I don't know what his status is there. I don't think he's got anything to qualify him per se, so it would be on an invite if there are enough kicking around. I'm not sure. I'm sure he's going to play a lot in his career. That's for sure.
We're at general business yet, Hazy? You're working through it?
This is just general business now, mate. Go your hardest.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that the European Tour is going to try a shot clock. I'm interested to know what you thought about that, Clayts. Austrian Open next year, they're going to have 40 seconds to play their shot once they're kind of over. It's their turn, and there'll be a kind of a yellow card system. First of all, you get a yellow card if you don't play in 40 seconds. If you do it again, you get a one-shot penalty. They did it at the Super Sixes in Perth, but this is the first time it's been used in a stroke play. I thought it was a great idea. And
Andrew Langford-Jones wanted to try it at the Vic Open this year. So he's a big shot clock advocate. I mean,
they're going to do it at the Austrian Open 2018.
Yeah. I mean, golf's just, as Jeff Ogilvy said the other day, it's embarrassing how slowly that we play now. You know, it's just. He was talking about the President's Cup, the 4 balls at the President's Cup, and he said Jordan Spieth's the best putter in the world, and he gets in a 4 ball. Now he's got some other bloke lining his putts up for him. He said, "What's going on?" He said, he said it's embarrassing how slow we play now. But I mean, people were bitching about slow play when I was playing in Europe 30 years ago. It's been slow for 50 years. Nicklaus was slow, Langer was slow, Kerry Middlecoff was slow. It's just. You just get to a pace where everyone plays to the pace they know they need to play to. In Japan, they still play in 4 hours. They fly because that's their pace.
What about when pros get there, the last man in the field after the cut? They have an odd number in the cut, or they're out of the cut line. There was a guy who went round in
Wesley Bryan played in 1 hour 30 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, they can play quick when they need to, but I mean, I think they should, rather than a shot clock, they should have a shotgun finish. So every group, you got your tee off. You got 4 hours to finish.
That's a better idea than a shot clock.
And if you're not done in 4 hours, you're off the course, mate. You're done. Take them off the 17th green. Sorry, out next. They'll all finish. Trust me, they'll all finish.
Sounds like that great proposed Olympic event, swimming with a shark in the pool.
Yeah. Well, no, a shotgun finish someone should try that.
I like it, Clayts. Last piece of general business for me before I do some housekeeping, and I don't know if you guys have got any more to talk about, but it would be remiss of us not to mention Hannah Green within her own right.
Jarryd Felton's girlfriend.
Jarryd's girlfriend. Hannah Green, a regular fixture on this podcast. She's just dominated the airwaves because she just dominates the Symetra Tour. She's racked up her 12th top 10 finish in a season, in a rookie season. 5th in the Tour Championship, 2nd on the money list, Symetra Tour Rookie of the Year, and LPGA Tour bound. Extraordinary.
She didn't have a lot to play for. I know it's the Tour Championship as such, but the purpose of that tour is to get onto the LPGA, and she'd already achieved that, and she already knew that. And she was out of the running after 2 rounds. It was a 3-rounder. Then she shoots, I think, 65 on the last day. So she's got some serious form going. It's been an awesome performance by her.
It shows what happens when the pressure comes off. And I think she was probably going to make her cut all year. She'd made 58,000.
Once she won one, she was pretty safe.
Well, she was on the edge still, but she had to make another 15,000, I think, which was very doable. She went back and she won that second tournament. Then it was all done. Was fine. And she goes and wins the third one.
Yeah.
Comes to the last tournament, shoots 65 the last day, finishes 5th when there were girls I think the girl who won, Rachel Rohana is her name. Mm-hmm. I think she finished 11th, right?
Yep, that's right.
So
missed by a spot.
She's at the tour school.
Yeah,
tough
very
game.
hard work.
Well, you're back on the Symetra next year, which is you're basically playing for your own money. It's a $500, I think, entry fee.
Yeah.
Everyone, so you're really out there playing for $100,000 a week. No one can. I mean, Hannah, I assume made some money this year.
Just over 100, I think.
Yeah. So I assume you would make something out of that. But essentially, only the top 5 girls are making anything like a breaking even or making a profit.
What do you say to the people who miss the cut as they walk out of the building? Just say thanks.
Thanks. See you next week. It's a tough game.
I got one before you roll on, Hazy. This amused me. Gareth Bale, who's a fantastic football player for Real Madrid and also for Wales, one of the best Welsh players ever, if not the best. He's got a place in outside of Madrid where he lives, and he's been putting these simulated sort of holes in his backyard because obviously it's a huge place. And he's had the 17th at Sawgrass, the island green, which I know, Hazy, you've played, but I think you may have birdied it a couple of years ago. Is that correct? And I know that Clayts absolutely hates that hole.
Well, I don't hate the hole. I hate the fact that people copy it.
Well, Gareth Bale's got it in his backyard. It's not as big a pond as there is at Sawgrass, but he's got the island there. And
Tom Doak.
So how about that?
Tom Doak called it the germ.
Yes.
The germ that started the plague.
Yes.
There's a American NASCAR driver, I think, who's got a replica 12th green at Augusta. So he plays off artificial turf. He pitches over the creek to the 12th green at Augusta.
Over Race Creek.
It's but no, the island. Why wouldn't you replicate the 15th at Kingston Heath or a proper hole?
I knew you'd say that.
It's a whole new podcast we're verging on here. And I just want to mention before we get off the Symmetric Tour, big congrats to Jade Panos for having probably her best result for the year, T12 there in Florida as well. And Beck Artis on the upward path too for hopefully a promising homeward summer. Now, guys, we've just wrapped up, I think, episode 21. We're in the middle of episode 21. I want to encourage people for when the great man Andy Marr gets back next week to give him some reviews on iTunes to make sure that we keep surging up the rankings. We'd love to read out a 5-star review. Blakey, I know a few of your mates have put in a few just to try and get them, but we've weeded them out. So keep listening to us. You can find Inside the Ropes on Spotify, Stitcher. You can download a podcast app through Google Play. You can listen through Apple Podcasts, and you can, of course, listen to it through the various Golf Australia and state websites around the country. And speaking of which, it's Golf Month around the country. We're halfway through now. I encourage everyone to get on to golfmonth.com.au and see what events are happening around your neck of the woods and get out and share the golf bug with someone. The big prize on offer. There's still 4 of these prizes to win.
It's a great prize.
Magnificent prizes to go and play golf, you and a friend at Barnbougle, Cape Wickham, Ocean Dunes, and Lost Farm, the 20-hole Lost Farm, Clayts, all on behalf of Air Adventure Golf Tours and Golf Australia. All you got to do is tell us in 150 words or less who you're going to share the golf bug with this October and how to do that via golfmonth.com.au. And I've got one last bit of housekeeping. It's very important. My good mate Erica at Golf Victoria, she's the head of a program called Get On Course, which is domestic. Well, it's being run in the state at the moment, but it's probably going to go national next year. It's all about women trying to have a hit who aren't quite ready to play fully on a golf course just yet, but they want to take that next step and get out there after perhaps a swing fit clinic. I encourage everyone to get onto golfvic.org.au/get-on-course and check it out. It's a great program just to try and make entry for women a bit more friendly and a bit more compatible and among mates primarily at golf courses, just to start getting the bug, and hopefully that might lead you one day down to those magnificent courses.
Short courses. We need short courses. Himalayas, putting greens, par 3 courses. We need.
Yeah, I see Pinehurst just opened a 700-metre par 3 course.
Gil Hans did it. Jaime Diaz did a terrific article yesterday it's on Jeff Shackelford's website for anyone who wants to dig it up about the popularity of short courses and par 3 courses. And nothing new. There's a short course at North Berwick where adults aren't allowed to play unless they're accompanied by children.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Great. It's great.
What
fun.
a great idea.
It's brilliant. It's fantastic. Right in the middle of town. That's what golf needs, more of that stuff.
No kids, no play.
No kids, no play. Yep.
Something we could think of, Blakey.
I played a par 3 course in Greenville, South Carolina a few years ago. Gee, it was great fun, and there were a lot of young people out there.
Yeah.
Well,
It was packed.
Did I go? No, it wasn't. We were talking about the par 3 course at Studley Park, weren't we, last time we were here? Yeah, well, someone needs to spend some money on that. There's a block of land behind the second tee. You could sell that for $1 million to someone who wanted to buy a nice house in Studley Park.